What's going on, guys? Bro Gaming here, and today we're doing another video. Now, if you remember, guys, a long time ago, I did a reaction video on the hoverboard. Like, it was a long time ago. It was like a couple of years ago, and that did pretty well. So I'm deciding to do another one, but this is on. Well, it was made by Heel Harogen. Helloran. And basically, it talks about World War II and like how many people died or something. I'm not 100% sure, but apparently it's really good. It's properly detailed, and I just feel like watching it because it was on my It was on my reaction, my recommended. And if you guys don't know, I'm a big fan of war games, big fan of war documentaries. I love them. I've been to war museums. I've been to the Warplane Museum and the camp in York. Both of you guys need to go there. They're both really good, especially the plane museum. There was like 50 planes. There's like bombers, there's jets, there's everything. So it's so good. Anyway, ignoring that, let's go back onto this. We're gonna watch this. We're gonna watch the whole 18 minutes. So I don't know how long this video is gonna be. And also, I don't have a camera, and if I did, I will clearly show you it, but I just don't. Which is quite sad. Which you guys can see, it's not working. No? No, I didn't mean. Remove. Yes. No. Oh my gosh. Display capture. Yeah, it's better. Move. Yes. Okay, anyway, back. And here we go.
The average lifespan of an American is 80 years. And an 80-year-old today was 10 when World War II ended, 4 when it began.
Okay.
A soldier who saw battle would have to be in his late 80s at least today. Generals, political leaders, the decision makers of the war, few are still with us. And over the past few decades, we've seen authors and filmmakers rush to
Oh my god, adverts.
capture stories from survivors.
Oh no, it's just lagging.
Before this connection of memory is lost. This project is not about individual war stories, and it's not about survivors. We're going to tally up the tens of millions of people whose lives are cut short by the war, and see how these numbers stack up to other wars in history, including trends in recent conflicts.
Let me turn down the thingy. That's better.
We'll be counting soldiers and civilians separately. Each of these figures represents 1,000 people who died. Civilians were of all walks of life.
Yes. I think everyone
Whereas
knows
military deaths were almost entirely men. The average age was about 23.
Oh my god! It's so nice when it just likes to stop and die, doesn't it? It's lovely. It's like the nicest thing ever. I will so want more of it. No, I don't really. Doing that just so I can capture up.
In most battles, for every 1,000 soldiers killed, there are more than 1,000 who are injured. The word casualty can be confusing because in military speak, it often includes both deaths and injuries, and anything else that takes a soldier out of service. Here, we're just counting the deaths, and we'll begin with American soldiers.
Let me Let me try and load up again because my PC just seems to run stupidly slow today. Don't know why.
Over 400,000 died. Most of the deaths occurred in the European theater, fighting the Nazis. And about a quarter were in the Pacific, fighting the Japanese. When you put them on the timeline, you see that casualties were the heaviest at the end of the war. The war began on September 1st, 1939. But the US wasn't willing to join the fight until Pearl Harbor, 2 years in. The deaths increased drastically on D-Day, when the Allies invaded Normandy. One of the most tragic moments of the war was on D-Day at Omaha Beach, where 2,500 Americans fell. So about the same number of US soldiers died on this single beach landing as the entire 13 years of the recent war in Afghanistan. The bloodiest battle in the Pacific was Okinawa, which lasted 82 days, during which 12,500 Americans died. About 5,000 of these deaths were at sea from kamikaze attacks. Now let's look at some other countries, starting with Europe. Germany started World War II when it invaded Poland. Poland ultimately lost 200,000 soldiers in the war. Most died after the invasion while the country was occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union. Germany, meanwhile, lost just 16,000 in the invasion of Poland. The Nazis went on to invade and conquer other countries, including Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Greece, and Yugoslavia. France surrendered, but after losing 92,000 soldiers in the Battle of France. Over 200,000 ultimately fell, which includes deaths in POW camps, French colonies, and other fighting. Yugoslavia suffered almost 500,000 military deaths.
Wow.
The initial invasion brought relatively few casualties on both sides. But the deaths mounted under Nazi occupation due to guerrilla fighting, civil conflict, and mass executions. The Nazi invasions were swift, with relatively few German losses. Even the Nazi commanders expressed surprise at their success. And then we have the United Kingdom and the United States, who were not invaded but took the fight to the Nazis. Britain lost about the same number of soldiers as the US, which includes the British colonies. Germany lost about 500,000 soldiers fighting the US and Britain in what is known as the Western Front, which took place in France and Belgium. But most Nazi soldiers died in the Eastern Front, Germany's unsuccessful invasion of the Soviet Union. The numbers are staggering. The most famous battle of the Eastern Front, and perhaps the turning point of the European war, was Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army successfully took Stalingrad, but then got surrounded by the Soviets and cut off from food and ammunition. 500,000 Nazis would ultimately die in Stalingrad.
Wow.
Another 100,000 were taken prisoner, of which 6,000 would ever return. POWs had a low survival rate throughout World War II, and it was particularly grim in the East. When you include these POWs, roughly the same number of Germans died in Stalingrad as
for God's sake,
all the Western Front fighting against France, the UK, and the US. And though Stalingrad was a victory for the Soviets, they suffered almost twice as many losses as Germany. The Soviet Union would eventually defeat the once unstoppable German army, killing 2.3 million Nazi soldiers.
Wow.
But winning the war came at a cost.
Never ending. It is never ending.
$8.7 million is the official tally by the Russian military, a hotly disputed number. Some studies have calculated as many as 14 million dead. To complete the count of European military deaths, we need to add German deaths from other fronts, including the North and Africa, as well as deaths from other Axis powers allied with the Nazis: Hungary, Romania, and Italy. When you put these European military deaths on the timeline, it looks like this. You can now interact with the chart to learn more. Pause the narration if you would like more time.
I don't wanna.
And now we switch to civilian deaths in Europe. Six million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust. If you separate this by country, you see that about half, 2.7 million, were Polish. 700,000 were Soviets, followed by Hungary and 17 other countries. Broken down another way, about half of the 6 million were killed in the concentration camps. Over 1 million died in Auschwitz. Most were killed in the gas chambers. Others died from starvation, exhaustion, disease, and other forms of execution. The second most deadly camp was Treblinka, which was exclusively an extermination camp, set up to look like a train station.
Like, okay, while it's
killing groups
lagging,
killed
we'll
1.4 million.
Pause it and let it catch up. It'd be good when it pauses, thank you. Is that, like, there was this documentary, I can't remember what it was about, but it was about World War II. I don't even think it was a documentary, I think it was a movie. But, oh no, it was, Hope and Glory. If you haven't seen that World War II movie, I highly recommend you watch it, because it's quite serious. It's a good movie, but quite serious. But there's a part in it where one of the like servants or something was like Jewish, and a German soldier came over to say about coming to the camps, and they put it as like really fun. Like you can play games there, you can have your mates there, you can have beers, like comfortable living bedrooms, like luxury, but he did. I can't remember if it was a he or she or the servant, but they didn't go seamlessly because what actually happened in there. Because there was a Jewish, like not a lot of people know this, but there was a Jewish person who actually like escaped from one of them, but then he was found and killed. Like, don't know what way, but I know that because my teachers told me, and it's really sad to hear about it because you just don't think that like now we're in like obviously I live in Britain and it's just quite serious for me because obviously Britain was one of the main reasons of the war, and like Britain's still into the war today, like they're helping America and whatnot, and obviously Russia's come over to Britain and they're requesting World War III basically. So it's quite serious and quite sad actually because you just wish that the world wasn't this type of place. You wished it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna kill everyone, which it's really sad in many, 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 many ways. And you just wish it would like never happen, but of course it never happens because North Korea going after America. Because what basically is North Korea is going to go after America, and us as Britain's going to defend, and then Russia's going to go after Britain and USA, and then France will come in and back up. So that would be World War III. It'll basically be World War II all over again. But Germany basically won't be in it. They might, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, back on with the video.
Like with the gas chambers, men were killed first to reduce the risk of revolt. The Holocaust also includes non-Jewish deaths. Between 130,000 to 500,000 Roma, then called Gypsies, were killed. The numbers are disputed. About 250,000 people with disabilities were killed. Homosexuals, Catholics, and other groups were also exterminated, but their numbers are relatively small. Some historians say that other civilian deaths should go under the label of Holocaust. About 2 million non-Jewish Poles were killed under German occupation, some of which were sent to the gas chambers at Auschwitz. When you combine civilian and military deaths, over 16% of the total Polish population died in World War II, which is the highest percentage of any country. But not the highest in total death count. The Soviet Union again tops that list, losing at least as many civilians as it did soldiers, somewhere between 10 and 20 million. A particularly dark moment for the Soviet Union was the siege of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. German forces surrounded Leningrad before civilians could be evacuated. Supplies, including food, were cut off for 2.5 years.
No.
1.5 million people died as a result, mostly from starvation, mostly civilians. Stalin's cruelty towards his own people is partly responsible for these numbers. He often didn't allow civilians to evacuate from cities, thinking it would cause the soldiers protecting them to fight harder. About 1 million Soviets died in Stalin's own labor camps, called the Gulag. Just about every country suffered civilian losses, especially countries who were invaded. While many died as a result of so-called collateral damage, the biggest numbers occurred when it was no accident. Civilians were exterminated, purposely fired upon or bombed, used as human shields, or intentionally deprived of food. The intentional killing of civilians was done by most warring parties, including the United Kingdom and the United States. The United Kingdom was spared of a land invasion, but still lost 60,000 civilians, largely from German air raids or blitzes, often directed at civilian population centers. The UK did the same to German cities at a much greater magnitude, causing about 10 times the number of deaths. But most German civilian deaths came from the ground at the late stage of the war. When the Nazi regime collapsed, civilians living in occupied regions had to desperately flee from the advancing Soviet army. Rapes were widespread, and death estimates ranged from 600,000 to 3 million.
Wow, that's a lot.
Let's step back and see where we are with the totals.
2.2 million.
We just counted about 20 million civilian deaths in Europe.
Oh, wow.
If you add this to the European military deaths we already covered, it brings us to over 40 million.
40 million.
Then we have the Asian theater. Here we see the vast majority of military deaths in Asia came from China and Japan. On the civilian side, about 6 million deaths from China, Indonesia, Korea, Indochina, and the Philippines can be attributed to Japanese war crimes, which are sometimes compared to the Nazi atrocities due to the sheer scale of the cruelty. China had the second highest death count after the Soviet Union. And like the Soviets, the Chinese government demonstrated a stunning willingness to sacrifice its own people. Chinese nationalists opened the dike at the Yellow River, hoping the flood would halt the Japanese advance. 500,000 Chinese civilians or more were killed, which is 2 or 3 times the number who died in all countries in the 2004 Asian tsunamis. But the invasion of China only cost Japan 200,000 soldiers. Most were killed fighting the US and allies in the Pacific War. A significant portion of Japanese civilian deaths were caused by American firebombing and the 2 nuclear attacks. Contrary to official US statements, these airstrikes were directed at civilian populations, not military targets. When you add all the deaths outside of Europe, it brings us to a grand total of 70 million for the war, give or take depending on who's counting and what civilian deaths get included. More people died in World War II than in any other war in history. For comparison, here are 20 or so of the very worst wars and atrocities we have on record. Some of these are more of atrocities than wars, but we've seen how that distinction can get blurry. Some of these spanned across centuries. World War II had the highest body count, and it all happened in just 6 years. The world's population has grown significantly since the earliest atrocities on this list. If you want to compare them in terms of what percentage of the world died, we can adjust the chart to look like this. This rough approximation tells us there may have been more devastating wars before World War II, proportionally speaking.
One thing I've just realised is that if there were 70 million people who died in World War II, the population of the UK right now is 6.9 million. Maybe Google might say, okay, Google, what's the population of the UK?
The population of the United Kingdom was 65.64 million in 2016.
Obviously now it's 16. I think it's at 70 actually by the time of this video. So basically, right now, if everyone died in Britain, it'll be the same amount of deaths as in World War II. Wow. That's actually quite sad. It's like, you just think of you thought that World War I was really serious, but it was because we all surrendered. Because it was just a shock. But Britain and whatnot knew that there was going to be World War II, so they prepared for it, and that's why it lasted longer.
When we turn to post-war conflicts, it's hard to say anything that isn't controversial. But the data shows something quite extraordinary has been happening. In 1989, John Gaddis coined the phrase the long peace to identify the absence of conflict between the nuclear powers during the Cold War. 25 years later, the Cold War is over, and the term is still being used, although its meaning may have shifted. European countries have not fought each other, except for this 10-day war in 1956 when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary. When we look at European wars before World War II, it looks like this. They tend to be more frequent as you go back, though smaller in scale. And the largest 44 economies of the world have not battled each other since World War II. Rich countries have fought poorer countries, like the US versus Iraq, but rich countries have not fought other rich countries. Such a period of peace between the so-called great powers hasn't been seen since the Roman Empire. To many, peace is too strong of a word. Wars have occurred since World War II, and they can be grouped into these 4 categories. We don't see colonial wars anymore. We've already noted that interstate wars between rich countries have not occurred at all, and here we see wars involving smaller economies have tapered off. That leaves civil wars of 2 types, with and without foreign intervention. And this is what these battle deaths look like alongside of World War II. More people died fighting in World War II than in all the wars since. And again, we can't forget about world population, which has almost tripled since World War II. If we scale these numbers to show deaths in proportion to world population, showing the likelihood that a person on Earth dies in battle, the downward trend becomes even more pronounced. Now, this isn't to infer anything about why this trend is occurring. That's a discussion for another day. You can now interact with this chart to explore what conflicts are behind the totals. Now bear in mind we're just looking at battle deaths here, not civilian deaths, but those too are in decline. Peace is a difficult thing to measure. It's a bit like counting the people who didn't die in wars that never happened. We give such importance to the word peace, but we don't tend to notice it when it occurs, or report on it. Sometimes it takes reminding ourselves of how terrible war once was to see the peace that has been growing around us. Of course, this trend may not continue, and it's not clear how looking at these charts can help us make the right decisions to ensure that it does. But the longer the long peace grows, the more significant it becomes. So if watching the news doesn't make us feel hopeful about where things are heading, watching the numbers might.
That's it. That's it. Oh my God, that was, I want to say, if you guys seriously want me to do more stuff on this, I would really love to, because that was quite touching actually. Like, I'm just, okay, watching this now, it was like quite upsetting. I'm gonna put on the thingy, like, warning, quite sad, because it was, and like it kind of, like, he agrees, like the longer we have world peace, the more fortunate we have of it. Like, you don't know that in, like, obviously it's 2018 now, and obviously then it was made in 2016. But every single second of someone's life matters, and it's like kind of like was like a family death. It goes so quick you don't even realize, and spend time with them before they die, or if World War III begins, because then when World War III begins, by far it'll be there'll be more deaths in World War III than in World War II, and it's quite for real, and it's quite sad, and it's quite just touching in many ways. And it's and like you think about World War II and you don't think it actually happened. You just thought, oh, World War III will never happen. But especially what the world's going through right now, the more shocking and the more upsetting and the more, well, everything really. You don't think that we're in 2018, a day before, well, basically just a couple more hours until the 1st of April, and you just don't think that World War II happened, and it feels like such a long time ago, but honestly, it was only like 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s of years ago, and like you see people who were alive in then, you feel really upset that they've had to be there and they've had to witness World War II happening, because just thinking about World War II is quite a touching moment, quite a sad moment. And like I said, it's really for real, and it's really sad that this world peace is going because of obviously all the bad things happening in the world right now. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to end this reaction. I highly recommend, if you don't want to watch this, but you want to see like the parts about the graphs, you can hardly do that. I don't mind. It's quite sad, and obviously go give this guy some support, because obviously he's only on 32,000 subscribers, and it's quite touching. And yeah, on that note, thanks for watching. Also, guys, I hope you liked the new outro, because I like it. I didn't want to go for a simple one, but I thought I wanted to go for a cool one, so that was it. And you guys have been loving the intro. You guys have been smashing the video as well. And just, yeah, do give or take, I did watch it a couple of hours ago just because I had to. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ding on that bell. Can we go for, because it was World War II, can we go for 2 likes? I'm not saying that we won't be able to, but I'll be happy if we do. If you guys want more, I will probably go search for them now and record them in Prepare and whatnot. And also, this is the second video today. The very first video was on ABP Reloaded, which was an awful game. I played it this morning, and it got up like a couple hours ago. Like I said, obviously now currently it's 5 to 8, and I don't know what time we'll be up. We'll probably be up around 10, half 10, maybe 11, just depends. And also the internet now currently is going a bit ups and downs. but I don't have to upload it to YouTube and bring it back down. I can just upload it straight up. So it might be around 9 o'clock this is up. Anyway, so thanks for watching. I'm going to stop it now because it'll take a lot longer because we've been doing it for 30 minutes. Holy God. And yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like, ding on that bell. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my Twitter, Snapchat, everything. Don't forget to check out my teammates channel if you don't know who they are, if you don't know what they are, you don't know anything about them. Here they are. Here's my teammates. I highly recommend you go subscribe to them. Probably not that one, or maybe. Well, mainly that one, just don't, because I forgot to point them out. But go subscribe to all these people, and that's just my vlogging channel, which I haven't done anything on yet, and it's quite old. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hope you like the new background as well, because I quite like it. And yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and obviously, if you want to watch this video on your own, then you can do it yourself. And it was quite a serious video, and yeah, thanks for watching, and peace.